Henry and the Snail and the Millipede. Henry was somersaulting down Poppy Hill, squealing with sheer abandon as his spiky bald body careered towards the long grass below. He had reminded himself that morning that life was to be lived, not suffered, endured, or trudged through, but lived, and lived with passion. How Henry had slipped into the doldrums was a mystery. A heavy nothingness had begun to press down on him, squeezing the breath out of him and leaving him sleepy and disinterested. Today he was determined to unleash a storm. His cheekiness had begun to blow again, like a soft breeze, bringing the promise of more. Tumbling down Poppy Hill had given him an idea. He had decided to arrange an unlikely race between Snail and Millipede on the slippery slope. Around the forest he placed posters with the puzzling title, "Can 1 foot move faster than 1,000?" It sparked imagination, and soon under tree roots, in the hollows of hillocks, and under sheltering leaves, opinions were being shared. The overwhelming conclusion was that 1 foot had no chance of taking on a multiped. The animals even began to suggest that Henry was being very unfair. Some animals had teased Snail recently about being so slow. They had suggested she be banned from some of the pathways because she caused long delays. It was only the week before that she had been reduced to tears by the hot and bothered Millipede, who had bellowed at her grumpily. Now it seemed as though Henry was going to humiliate Snail in a race that she couldn't possibly win. It was most unlike Henry, who normally had such a sweet and kindly disposition. Then Henry delivered another surprise. He said that the winner would receive a chestnut trophy marked with the words, "The fastest," and the one who came second would receive an acorn medal marked with the words, "A great effort." Henry had asked Centipede to make the grand presentation. The week before the race, Snail arose early every day, training before the sun grew hot and dried the dew, improving the speed of the muscular pulses across her foot until she was skimming along faster than ever before. Millipede, meanwhile, was sunbathing, sipping nonchalantly some mint water. No one mentioned it to Snail, although she probably suspected it, that Millipede could saunter over to a decaying log for lunch twice as fast as Snail's new-found speed. The animals began to talk about the race more as a comedy than a sporting competition, and prepared jokes about Snail that they could use when she finally slithered across the finishing line long after Millipede. The night before the race, Henry was very busy. He had selected the other side of Poppy Hill for the race. It was steep and had a rocky surface. First, he brushed all the surface gravel away, the twigs, leaves, and topsoil. When it was finally clear, he painstakingly rubbed hazel and dogwood oil over the smooth, rocky surface until it was perfectly slippery, and then marked off the area on both sides with fallen branches to stop any of the other animals walking across it. Henry, that night, slept like a log. The race day began with a special dawn chorus thoughtfully arranged by the robins, calling all the animals to Poppy Hill. The race, though, couldn't start until the afternoon to give Snail enough time to arrive. As she slowly laboured up the hill, Millipede scoffed, and others joined in the bullying. Snail's black eyes clouded with sadness, and her stomach began to ache with a deep, hurt feeling. Henry asked the wasps to do a loud buzzing fly-past to call everyone to order, and then explained the rules. Snail and Millipede. The course has been well prepared, oiled and polished, slippery and fast. You will make your way to the silken cobweb start line. Then, on the crow's core, the race will begin. The first to the bottom of the hill is the winner. Much to Millipede's irritation, Owl suggested Snail should be allowed to start 5 minutes before the Millipede. It's only fair, protested Owl. Snail hasn't a chance of winning otherwise. I'm very sorry, said Henry, but both have to start at the same time. The tension was like Rabbit's famous grass cake that you could cut with a knife. Millipede moved quickly into position, complaining about how much of the day had been wasted waiting around for Snail. Crow flew high to make sure her caw would be easily heard, and it was so loud that Snail almost jumped out of her shell before she sent the first muscular pulse through her foot. Snail moved forward at first at a snail's pace. Millipede, on the other hand, lurched forward, ready to sprint or slide on his multiple feet to the bottom in an astonishing time. However, that was when utter shock began to show on the face of every spectator. Millipede, having launched himself forward, wasn't at all comfortable with the smooth, oily, slippery surface that Henry had prepared the night before, and his many feet flew in different directions, causing him to wiggle and squiggle, to topple and tumble, getting nowhere very fast. Snail, on the other hand, found that her single foot acted like a snowboard, sending her careering down Poppy Hill at a speed she had only ever dreamt about. In seconds she had burst past the finish line to rapturous and surprised applause. Then it was Snail's turn to have to wait for Millipede, who followed some time later, still zigzagging uncontrollably down the slope. It took Centipede quite some time to calm the shock waves that passed through the chatter of the animals. Finally, the unlikely presentation was made of the chestnut cup to Snail as the fastest, and the acorn medal to Millipede for a great effort. All the other animals then showered them with their gifts. But the most special gift of all was offered last by Millipede to Snail, not wrapped up, but given in a few sweet words. "I'm sorry," Millipede said, for being so impatient, such a grump and a torment to you. You were awesome on that slope. I've begun to realize that we're all good at different things. And we're so sorry too," echoed the other animals. The journey home was a much happier one for everyone, and would have been a much slower one had not the victorious Snail been invited to sit in a place of honour on a lily leaf that Millipede happily pulled behind him. But halfway home, Snail asked if she could lead them for the rest of the way, at her pace. At first some complained a little, but soon they began to discover hidden wonders. There were so many things to see, smell, and experience, all lost in a rush. Furthermore, it gave the chance for new friendships to be made amid the chatter and laughter of that remarkable journey. Even Millipede decided that in future he would slow down a little, because Snail had helped him to realize that there are so many different ways you can experience life.